hear that? Welcome to the car again. It's been a while. So on my nice little drive down to work right now, I was just kind of thinking, and I realized that there are a number of people in kind of the Linux user slash quote influencer sphere that either move out to the country to more rural areas or plan on doing so down the road. And usually these types of people are the kind of people that run a window manager or other programs that basically let you control the nitty-gritty of things. They're usually the ones that do a lot of things in plain text or very simple formats that are very configurable and readable and easy to use. It doesn't look easy, but once you get into it, it's pretty simple and easy to understand because there's not a lot to it. And really where that thought process took me is that kind of workflow, the workflow where you take control of what you have. So Linux allows you a lot of freedom versus like what you might typically find with Windows or the other like. And that kind of control lends itself to wanting to have a bit more freedom when you switch to the other systems or anything else. And it just feels dirty to go to the other ones after being a while. Because I know after being in like i3WM, BSPWM, and since moving to working with Awesome kind of full-time, you're used to being able to have a lot of the things that you need to pull something up or what all kind of at your fingertips right from the keyboard. And Windows doesn't always afford you that convenience. You don't always have the options to configure the nitty-gritty in a very simple way. Normally you have to jump through a few hoops in order to get there. And more than anything, you've kind of got control over how much data you want to give away and what you're giving away, because with Linux you've got the option to shut down a lot of the tracking that you may not have the options with Windows, because you can install those Windows tweakers that turn off all the privacy, like invading settings, the telemetry and all that, but when a new update comes out, you've got to redo that all over again. With Linux, it's not the same way. Yeah, sometimes they update a couple things in a config file and add a few more settings or change a couple things here and there, but it normally tells you what's changed. It creates, depending on your package manager, it'll create a new config file skeleton, a default one, that you can kind of work off of to update your configs. But other than that, for the most part, you can usually keep it the same. Your usuallys pretty much stay the same unless like something really drastically changes because it's an early development build of a program. But it's that kind of control that kind of lends itself to wanting to move out to the rural, because you've got more control over that thing. Why can't I have more control over this thing? And generally rural areas let you have more control over what you can grow, what you can have, and things like that. You've got more control over your privacy and other things that way, because generally in the more rural areas, your neighbors are further away. You've got a larger patch of land that you can experiment with and sandbox with, which in that sort of Linux lifestyle lends itself to, because you've already been doing it with your computer. Why can't I do it with like my gardening, my food, my other stuff? You can control your workflow, your resources for free. So like, for example, or for cheaper, one of the two. Generally, it's cheaper to grow your own stuff, but it takes a bit more work up front until you figure out a good system that'll work, and then you can make it almost effortless, which is kind of the same way with Linux. At first, there's a learning curve, which a lot of people don't want to have to butt up against. But after you get through that learning curve and you really figure out what workflow you need, what kind of things you want, then it gets a lot easier and quicker. And you are literally shaving, in some cases, you're literally shaving like a half hour off of a task because of that workflow. Thank you, truck. But then once you get into a rural area, you kind of have that same idea. At first, it may be hard to grow your own food because you're kind of going through that learning curve. But once you figure out a system and a pattern that works for you, that's usually where the window manager comes in, for example, is you figure out the pattern to it, and then it becomes ingrained in memory. In much the same way with like growing your own food, once you figure out the pattern after a year or two, it becomes much easier because it becomes ingrained in habits or in systems that you build to help take some of that workload off of you. And for many Linux users, they automate a lot of things. So for example, Donald Fiore, right now he's working with a bunch of stuff in Go for his videos, but a lot of his videos he actually uses command line scripts he wrote himself in order to edit his videos down and to set those up. And it's pretty effortless for him. It's those kinds of things where it's like you start to learn the system and it's like, okay, I see how I can do that. So for example, you can automate pulling out all the silence in videos, or just plain uploading, like straight from the get-go. So another example, mine was rather rudimentary. So it would basically, it was a script that would show the name of the music that was playing on my BRB screen for streams. But all I did was I had OBS load up a text file, and that text file contents would change based on the song that was playing. The problem was, the script was checking the MPE status every second in order to figure out, okay, has the song changed yet in MPD? MPD, for those that don't know, is a music player daemon that runs in the background. So it's rather GUI agnostic. So you can write something that interfaces with it pretty easily. So like if you wanted to, there are people that have a script set up that basically shows the notification pop up whenever a song changes, and it shows the album art, the name, the artist, and so on. So I had kind of that same deal to kind of work around having to manually do something myself for a stipulation someone had for using their music in streams. And it worked out really well, actually. I mean, you would almost think it wasn't that rudimentary from the surface, but really it kind of kills the, disk, because it's always writing constantly, because it's literally, like, it doesn't check the file contents and compare it. It just literally overwrites it every second. So you're not just reading it, but you're also writing it too a lot. But it's those kinds of things that you can start to automate and make easier. Whereas with some Windows, generally, you've got like, okay, I mean, your scripting options are like PowerShell, but usually it's in separate programs and otherwise. Whereas Linux has a lot of command line utilities that you can front interface with, and then other programs can take advantage of that output, and the whole world is yours. But you've got to get through that learning curve. And then, yeah, it's And then again, going back to the rural, you have that learning curve, but you learn that you have a lot of control. You can lay out your yard more how you want to. You can lay out your house more how you want to. You're not beholden to an HOA to tell you what to do in some cases. And in many ways, you can become more self-sustainable, because in many rural areas, you might have the option to go off-grid if you really want to. And I mean, yeah, sometimes internet can be hard, but as Luke Smith would put it, Soylink is coming all over the place. It takes time, but I mean, Soylink is coming. And it's advertised for people that are rural. And I would hope that it would be one of those things where you have that fine-tune of control, if you really want to, where you can literally get into the nitty-gritty of it and figure things out. That would make me really happy, but until I actually am able to sit down and experiment with it, I won't know. But you kind of get used to that kind of control, and then when you don't have it, you're like, what the heck? So it seeps into every part of your life. And that's why more of these people plan on moving rural. There's more freedom out there, really. Just like on their computer, they've got more freedom to do what they want to. Yeah, they have to learn how to use that freedom and use it responsibly and not abuse it, but there's more freedom. You stay in the city, and there's so many different things that can get in the way that it's like, what am I doing with my life? I mean, you take, for example, the last year when there were food shortages in grocery stores, or it was a little bit harder to find food, or you had no toilet paper, and you start to realize the city kind of sucks, and more people are looking at moving rural. But it's for reasons of, well, no, it's for about the same reasons. Freedom. Really what it comes down to, freedom. So yeah, that kind of freedom becomes a lifestyle. And when you start to want to explore more of it, it drives you to change your life. Yeah, well, scream at me on Discord. As I mentioned in the last one, if you've got any suggestions for, like, awesome ricing, then let me know. And yeah, see you in the next one, whether that's at my computer or whatever comes up next.